A few videos back, I showed you an edger that I got from a friend who lives almost an hour and a half away from me. Not only did he give me this edger to work on, but he also gave me this free mower that he was able to find on our favorite online marketplace. Now, this was my first time seeing a Powersmart mower, and even though I appreciate the gift, this mower has to be one of the cheapest mowers I've ever worked on. What's up everyone, and thank you for stopping by. Today's project is this Powersmart mower, and the problem is that I don't know if it even runs because I just got it home, but it's safe to assume that it probably doesn't start, and the worst part is that this mower is barely a season old and it already has problems. In fact, it's really hard to tell just how new it is because it's covered in last year's grass clippings. If I remember correctly, it did come with the grass bag, and it too was full of the last meal that it had before it was put up. I hate to say it, that pretty much sets the tone for how well this mower was cared for and probably the reason why it was given away. Now, the quality of the materials and its design demonstrate how far they're willing to go to save money. The metal is very thin, the plastics are very flimsy, and the important structural parts do their job, but I doubt they're going to last a couple of years. The biggest unknown is the engine and whether or not it's going to last more than a couple of seasons before it has a major issue. The most surprising part is the price for this mower, which, as far as I can tell from my research, has to be one of the cheapest self-propelled mowers available from a storefront, so you can see why it was built the way it was. Because it's one season old, I do want to check what the oil looks like. At least they were nice enough to put a sticker on the side of the engine showing how to check the oil level, which only has us pressing the dipstick against the filler neck. Now remember to clean the dipstick off and then reinsert it to check the oil level. Now according to it, it looks to be just shy of full, which is perfectly fine, and it has some color to it, which means it could do with an oil change. After checking the air filter, it's just a foam filter which doesn't do a very good job of keeping anything from getting by it. I'm pretty sure these are supposed to be lightly oiled to make them more effective. I already checked the fuel tank and it's pretty much empty, which is the way I prefer it before tipping the mower on its side to inspect it. Now, after getting it on its side, as to be expected, there's a fair amount of grass clippings stuck to the mowing deck. Leaving it like this year after year on a metal mowing deck leads to a rusted deck, which means even if the engine happens to last that long, the mowing deck will more than likely need to be replaced due to structural damage. Now, there's also some light gouging on the edge of the blade, which means this mower has been used to run over sticks and small branches, which is not a good idea. When looking at the transmission, I thought they had painted the plastic body with silver paint, which I thought was kind of weird to do since most people will never see it, but it turns out it's metal. I'm not going to make any claims to its strength or durability, but I'm pretty sure it was economically made. The driveline is also a very simple design, which should make working on it pretty easy, that is if you can even find the parts for it. The wheels are also very simple in design and are very cheaply made. Most of the time when I find these on the marketplace, the tread is almost completely gone, which means the rubber on these wheels is not very durable. Now the carb and intake setup is also a simple design. Even the fuel line is made as short as possible to minimize cost. They should change the name of this brand from Powersmart to CostSmart because everything here is made to a cost to keep it as affordable as possible. Before we start to diagnose and eventually fix this mower, I'm going to give it a good cleaning, which it probably has never had. This will keep me from getting dirt and debris in places where it's not supposed to be, like in the carb or the fuel tank. After cleaning it, we'll then start to diagnose it and hopefully get it working again. I'm going to start by pre-soaking the dried grass under the mowing deck so it'll be easier to remove later on. If it's not too bad, we could just use the water to remove the dried grass. However, this one's going to require some scrubbing. After spraying it for some time, I'm going to let it soak in, and in the meantime, focus on the top of the mower. So the water got most of the dirt and debris washed away. However, some of it is still stuck to the paint. For this part, I'm going to have to agitate it using liquid soap and a brush. To make the job a little easier and to take less time, I'm going to use a medium-sized paintbrush. And I have to admit it, this makes it so much easier to do than using a toothbrush. But as you'll see here in a minute, this size of a brush can't get everywhere, and a smaller brush works much better. After getting the top of the mower clean, we can now move to the dried grass under the mowing deck. The more time you let it soak, the better, but this should be more than enough time for this amount of grass. Next, I'm going to use my scraper to carefully remove the grass, and since it's been soaking, you shouldn't have to use a lot of pressure to remove it. If for some reason the grass is still dry under a layer of wet grass, spray the mowing deck again and give it another 30 minutes. Once I remove the majority of the dried grass, I'll use my brush to get the rest of the grass off the mowing deck. You might have to use some water to make it easier to scrub the deck, but after doing this small area, you can see that it looks really good and that the rest of the mowing deck should look a lot like this one. If you want to use your pressure washer, that will work extremely well, but as you can see here, it's not necessary. Once I've loosened most of the grass, I can then use my garden hose to wash it away. Once it's clean, this should improve the mower's mulching ability along with the cut quality. The other thing to make your mowing experience a lot better is to make sure your blade is sharp, which means you cannot run over sticks and twigs. You're going to have to pick them up before you mow or during your mow. Now, it's not spotless, and that's perfectly fine because we got the majority of the grass removed. If you want to spend more time getting all the grass clippings off, that's up to you. I have heard of people treating their mowing deck to prevent grass from building up, and if you do this, I'd like to hear about it. Before I remove the foam filter, I'm going to try and remove as much of the grass clippings as possible. I tried to blow the clippings away, however, it just went all over the top of the mower, so a vacuum seemed to make more sense to me. Then I'll spray some fuel into the intake, replace the filter, and then try starting it and see what happens. If it runs for a second, then I know we have some compression from the engine and a working ignition system. So it started and ran, but it didn't run as well as I thought it was going to. Now that I know it has the ability to run, I'm going to try my luck and put some fuel into the tank and see if it'll start and run. If it does run, it could save me a lot of time. Now, if you've watched any of my videos before, you'll know what kind of luck I have. So unfortunately, it didn't even try and start. Now there might be an issue with the priming system, which on this style of carb is critical for the engine to start. Let's give it a second try and maybe we'll get lucky. So it still didn't start, which is not good news. More than likely, we have a carb issue. Also, I don't know what this popping sound is coming from the engine, but it doesn't sound very good as I've never heard anything like it before. The next thing I want to do is to remove the spark plug and see if there's a problem with it. Seeing as how this is an overseas engine, I would imagine it has an overseas spark plug in it. And what do you know, it has an overseas spark plug in it. Now, I'm not fond of this spark plug, but if it is working, I'm going to leave it in there as I typically only change plugs when I have a confirmed spark plug issue. Now, to confirm that I have a bad spark plug, or at least one that has some issues, I'm going to use my spark plug tester. As long as the spark looks strong and consistent, I'll put it back into the engine. So it looks like this plug is working just fine at the moment, so I'm going to reuse it. If you suspect a bad plug, I would just replace it as they aren't that expensive. The next thing I want to do is to test the engine compression. The reason I want to test it is I want to confirm that those weird popping noises I heard earlier while pulling over the engine doesn't have to do with the engine internals like the valve train. The compression tester will measure how much pressure your engine can make on the compression stroke, and the higher the better. Since we'll be using the pull rope, there might be a compression release on this engine, so the reading might be lower than normal. The reading looks to be about 114 psi, which means this engine does have a compression release and that the reading could be a lot higher, probably around 130 psi. As far as I can tell, this engine is very healthy and that there's nothing wrong with it. If you need more information about these compression testers, there should be a link in the description. Unfortunately, if I continue with this repair, this video will be well over 20 minutes long, which is not something I like to do. I find that if my videos are over a certain amount of time, I lose the viewer's attention, which is just natural. So this is where we leave this mower until the next video, where we take off the carb, clean it, and if it starts, find out if there's anything else wrong with this mower. Overall, this mower is very simply built, but so far I find it very simple to work on as well. I do feel that you get what you paid for. It's a very cheap mower, so you get cheaply made components that are made from plastic and very thin metal and minimal fasteners. Personally, I'd rather spend my money on a used name brand mower instead. Thank you for watching. I really do appreciate your time here. Please feel free to ask me any questions about this project or your own projects, and I hope to see you in the next video.